we doing? How are we doing, Las Vegas? Are you ready to fight? Are you ready to win? Are you ready to protect each other? And we're going to take our country back. That's what we're here to do. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Alexandria. Some of you may know me as AOC. Ooh. And I am so happy to be back in Las Vegas. You know, my home is a ways from here, but in truth, the distance between us is a lot shorter than we think. Or even that we're told. And I want to thank each and every one of you for making the effort to be here today. Thank you all so much. I know a lot of you have had to make lots of plans and carpool and figure out how you're going to get here, and it's not easy. Pardon? Louder, okay. Okay, thank you. People in the back, thank you for helping me. Is that good? All right, thank you. And I have to tell you, thank you, Nevada, because there's so many more people here than we even anticipated. We are at capacity today. And how many of you, how many of you here, is this your first political rally? Let's give them a big round of applause. Thank you all so much for getting in the game. And I want to thank, who here is also getting in the game after not being as involved in politics, not knowing so much, who feel called and compelled? Thank you. Welcome. And I want to be the first to say, I don't care who you voted for in the past. You may have voted for Donald Trump in the past. You may have voted for Kamala Harris in the past. You may have not voted at all in the past. But I want you to know that, but you are here, regardless of all of that. You are here today. And I want to thank you for that. In fact, we're all here together because we share in the frustration and the heartache that comes from watching those in power actively tear down or refuse to fight for everyday working Americans like us. And we are here together because an extreme concentration of power and corruption is taking over this country like never before. But we are also here today because we know that a better world is possible. But to get there, we need to be honest about where we are. Because we are witnessing an oligarchy in America. And that is when those with the most economic, political, and technological power destroy the public good to enrich themselves while millions of Americans pay the price. And we are at a point where the wealthiest people in the world, like Elon Musk, and all the Republicans enabling him, are turning to loot what is left of Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security to bankroll even deeper tax cuts and sweetheart contracts for themselves, their fellow billionaires, and their corporations. And our political system right now is ill-prepared for this abuse of power. In fact, our political system enables it, starting with the role of money in politics. But I am here to remind you that we are not powerless in this moment. People are starting to put the pieces together. And ironically, the most divisive forces in our country are actually starting to bring more of us together. And that is important because the billionaire and the elite class derives their power from dividing working people apart along lines of left or right, race and gender, creed and culture. They will throw every label and judgment and cultural debate at us in the book to keep us distracted and from realizing that the only division that is truly hurting our country the most is the endless greed by those at the very, very top at the cost of everyone else. And that is why it has always been up to us, the working class of America. Our power comes from remaining focused, together, and building a movement where there is a place for everyone. For all the big talk that Republicans and the Trump administration like to flap about working people, if you actually listen carefully, every once in a while they let the mask slip about what they actually think about us. You know, just last week, President Trump's lawyer, her name is Alina Habba, she went on television, and when she actually had to be faced with explaining her job, and when she actually had to be faced with doing her job, this is what she had to say. Quote, what intellectual thought, when she was asked about me, quote, what intellectual thought? You were in a bar. You were in a bar, AOC, and not to have a drink, but to serve one. And I want you all to understand, I don't care about what this woman says about me, but I could give a damn. But I want you to understand that she isn't just talking about me here. She's talking about you. She is talking about all of us. Because the entire job of the president's lawyer is to speak for him. Trump hired her to speak for him. So imagine what it means for our country that the president's own lawyer cannot even conceive of a working class person being intelligent simply because of the job that they have. This woman could not even recognize the American dream if it was fed to her on a silver spoon. But understand that this kind of disdain for working people by the most powerful people in this country doesn't just come from not being raised right. It's a shorthand for Elon Musk and Donald Trump's entire political agenda and a certain ugly kind of politics, lying to and screwing over working people so that they can steal from our health care and Social Security and veterans care to pay for tax cuts for the wealthiest and bailouts for their crypto billionaire friends. There's a word for this: corruption. And seeing all of this stack up, how overwhelming and brazen and selfish this all is, and the constant barrage of headlines and phone notifications pinging all day long, it's enough to make even the best of us give up. It's enough to make anyone want to give in to despair. And trust me, I get it. And that is by design. That is by design. Because when the system is stacked against you, it's hard to feel like anything you do matters. It's hard to feel like we matter in this democracy. And it is easier to give in to despair. And I can tell you, for a while there, when I was working as a waitress, years never being able to get ahead, I felt that way too. I tried to stop caring. I tried to just keep my head down and work my shifts and accept that this is just how things are. But that is no way to live. It's no way to live. And what I do know is that the working class does not have to live like this. In fact, we cannot live like this. And Donald Trump sees the immense pressure that working people are under. But his answer is to create an America where every man is for themselves. Now that he's in power, we can see it clear as day. He's handed the keys to Elon Musk and is selling this country for parts to the richest people on the planet for a kickback. And in exchange, they will bankroll his campaigns and those of his allies. They scratch his back, he scratches theirs, and the rest of us are left behind. And the clever thing is that these guys sell is making people like you and me think that we're just one step away from being in that club too. Grindset mindset, right? Except their spoils are not earned. They are not working for these billions. They are stealing these billions. Just look at what Elon Musk and Donald Trump are doing to our health care, our veterans' benefits, and Social Security. In order to pay for even more tax cuts for billionaires, they are slashing the programs that we have spent a lifetime paying into. And mind you, even if you aren't on Medicaid or Medicare, it raises your private insurance costs too. So every single House Republican voted to cut Medicaid. And now they're all scared. They're saying, we didn't say that. We didn't do that. Also, let me tell you something. If I ask you, let me see. Do we have a kid around here? Okay, can I ask your son a question? Very simple question. What is 10 minus 4? I didn't say 6. I didn't say 6. That's what Republicans are doing with this budget. And what's your name? Bryce? Bryce's life depends on Medicaid. And all of us are here for Bryce, aren't we? That's what this is all about. That's what we're here for. We're here for Bryce. We're here for Bryce's mom. We're here for you. We're here for me. Because at some point, every one of us is going to need help. Every one of us. There's not some other people or every one of us. And that's what community is about. And in order to pay for even more of those tax cuts for billionaires, they're slashing programs like the Medicaid that Bryce relies on. And every single Republican voted for it. You see, these budgets aren't just fights about numbers. They are fights over our values that define us as a country. Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security were promises that we as a people have made to each other about what kind of country we are and who we are. It's not handed down from a politician or a billionaire. This is about the promises we make to each other. From neighbor to neighbor, from father to daughter, from friend to friend. You see, these budgets, again, they aren't fights about numbers. And these promises don't come from politicians. They come from us. And they are promises that we make to each other. So to me, the strength of our country is not just measured by the height of our best days. It's also about who's there for us on our worst day. And that is why I'm here with you today, Las Vegas. So let me share with you exactly what I mean. Because when they like to call us radical, and what they like to call me as radical, I believe is common sense. I believe that when a person gets sick, they shouldn't go bankrupt in the wealthiest country in the history of the world. Common sense. I believe that a minimum wage should cover the minimum cost to live. Common sense. And by the way, we should see that not paying a living wage is also a form of corporate welfare and looting. Because big companies like Walmart and Amazon often rely on the food stamp program and public coffers to cover the wages that they won't pay. I believe that homes are not slot machines for investors and Wall Street. To extort working families out of every last dollar that they have. A home is sacred. And when your landlord jacks up your rent by half overnight, or housing prices skyrocket because Wall Street treats our housing market like a casino, your government should fight for your ability to keep an affordable roof over your head. And finally, I believe our elected officials should take on abuses of corporate greed everywhere they find it. We must get big money out of politics and make clear that our country is not for sale. And that is why I don't and never will take money from lobbyists and corporations. You know, Fox News and the right wing will have you believe that these American values are something out of the Communist Manifesto. That we believe these things because we went to college and read them in a book somewhere. But let me tell you, Fox News, I don't believe these things. I don't believe in healthcare, labor, and human dignity because I'm a Marxist. I believe it because I was a waitress. Because I scrubbed toilets with my mom to go to school. Because I've worked double shifts to keep the lights on. And because on my worst day, I know what it feels like to feel left behind. And I know that we don't have to live like this anymore, Las Vegas. We deserve better than this, Las Vegas. And despite the chaos that surrounds us at the moment, I want you to know that we are closer to that world than we think. This isn't just about Republicans. We need a Democratic Party that fights harder for us too. But what that means is that we, as a community, must choose and vote for Democrats and elected officials who know how to stand for the working class. And Las Vegas, I want to tell you, I want to thank you for working hard to make that happen. You all have put in the work out here. Your representative, Stephen Horsford, is a culinary union member. You did that. You did that. And it shows, because last week, when other Democrats caved, your representatives, Stephen Horsford and Senator Jackie Rosen, stood strong against the pressure in D.C. and voted against the Republican spending bill that cuts billions from programs for the working class and for our veterans exposed to burn pits. Representative Susie Lee and every Nevada House Democrat voted no too. So I want to thank you. Your state is pulling its weight out here. But we need more like them with the courage to brawl for the working class. So we must defend them, but we can't stop there. Thank you. I want you to look at every level of office around and support brawlers who fight, because those are the ones who can actually win against Republicans. Let's be real about that. And beyond elections, our task is also to build community. I'm talking about block associations, volunteer groups, causes around you. That is the connective tissue, because community is the most powerful building block we have to defeat authoritarianism and root out the corruption in the White House. So I'll end where I began. We might all come from different places, but we share a lot of the same experiences. So to all those who came here today unsure of whether or not this is where you belong, I want to say that you do. You do belong. No matter who you voted for, no matter if you know all the right words to say, no matter your race, religion, gender identity, or status, no matter even if you disagree with me on a bunch of things. But if you are willing to fight for someone you don't know, you are welcome here. If you are willing to fight for the working class, regardless of who they are, how they identify, or where they come from, you are welcome here. Here, everyone is valued. But I will say this. Those leaders on either side of the aisle who are willing to put their fellow Americans down so that they can get ahead or feel better about themselves, they may best find a home somewhere else. Because in this house, we stand together. Because here we know that together without exception is the only way that we can win. So no matter how you identify or what you believe, especially out here, if you're a trans kid or a family of a trans kid, an LGBT family, we can't throw you under the bus in order to win. In fact, we can't win without you. And I want you to know that the world needs you. And I hope you see this movement is not about partisan labels or purity tests. It's about class solidarity. The thousands of people who came out here today to stand here together and say our lives deserve dignity and our work deserves respect. No matter who we are or where we come from. And we are here to make a sacred promise to each other and to kids like Bryce. And that promise is to take care of each other on our worst days and to share in the successes of our best. And it's my honor today to introduce someone to you who spent his life trying to bring us together. Because together, we will win guaranteed health care for every American. Together, we will win living wages for all. We will win a better future, and we will win a better world. And this person has given voice not only to our frustrations, but also to our vision and the promises, and speaks to the best America that we can be. And that man is Senator Bernie Sanders. So come on up, Bernie.
This is a great turnout. In fact, I've been to Las Vegas a number of times. This is by far the largest turnout. Thank you very much. And I want to thank Alexandria for being here with us. You know, she mentioned when she was a kid, she cleaned houses with her mom in order to help pay the family bills. She has not forgotten where she came from. And I want to thank Steve Horsford, who worked for the Culinary Workers Union, former chairman of the Black Caucus, and doing a great job in the Congress. Steve, thanks very much for what you're doing. So why are Alexandria and I here in Las Vegas, and we're heading to Colorado, and we're heading to Arizona? We are doing that because this country faces enormous crises. And how we respond to these crises today will impact not only our lives, but the lives of our kids, future generations, and in terms of climate change, the very well-being of the planet. And so today we are here to say very loudly and clearly, no, we will not accept an oligarchic form of society where a handful of billionaires run the government. No, we will not accept an authoritarian form of society with a president who undermines the Constitution every day and is working aggressively to take away our freedom of speech and freedom of assembly. No, we will not accept a society of massive economic inequalities where the very rich are becoming much richer while working families across the country struggle to put food on the table. And what we're saying today as clearly as we can, that in the richest country in the history of the world, we demand and will achieve an economy and a government that works for all of us, not just the 1%. It seems to me that before we can effectively determine the best way forward, it's important to do what is very rarely done in Congress or in the corporate media, and that is to have a frank discussion about the economic and political realities facing our country. So let's do something really radical. You ready? Let's tell the three wealthiest people in America, Mr. Musk, Mr. Bezos, Mr. Zuckerberg. You know those guys. Those three people alone own more wealth than the bottom half of American society, 170 million people. Three people, 170 million people. The top 1% now owns more wealth than the bottom 90%. And CEOs of major corporations now make 300 times what their average workers make. But it's not just income and wealth inequality. Today we have more concentration of ownership than we have ever had. While the profits on Wall Street and corporate America saw, a handful of giant corporations dominate sector after sector, whether it's agriculture, transportation, media, financial services. Small number of very, very large international corporations dominate. And they charge us outrageously high prices for the products they sell us. If you could believe it, three Wall Street firms, BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street, combined are the major stockholders of 95% of American corporations. And let me say this, the 1% live completely and isolated lives from the rest of this country. They have no clue what is going on in the real world. They live in their mansions and their gated communities. They fly around the world in the private jets or the helicopters that they own. They have well-trained nannies taking care of their babies. They send their kids to the best private schools and colleges. Sometimes they take vacations, not in a Motel 6, not in a national park, but in their very own islands that they own. And for the very, very richest, they have fun flying off into outer space on their very own spaceships. And maybe they should stay there. So that is one America. An America where people live with tremendous wealth and tremendous luxury. They have it all. But there is another America, the America that you know and the America you live in. And in that America, 60% of our people are living paycheck to paycheck. and millions of workers are trying to get by on starvation wages. Unlike Donald Trump, I grew up in a family that lived paycheck to paycheck, and I know, as you know, something about that reality. And it is a reality that I will never forget. And I have a feeling as I look out at you today that many of you know that reality. Now here's something that we don't talk about too much. What does it mean? What does it mean to live paycheck to paycheck? Tell me, what does it mean? Robbing Peter to pay Paul. Oh, raise your hand. Let me get to some people. Yes. Going without. Yes. Knowing how to figure out how to pay your credit card when interest rates are 20% if you're delinquent, right? Yes, ma'am. How to put one's kids through college. Yes. Wanting to buy a house. How are you going to ever figure that one out? Yes, sir. Paying whether or not you're going to buy your prescription drugs or do you pay your rent? Yes, sir. Going hungry in America. Way in the back there, yeah. Wanting to go to college, not having the money to do that, yeah. Okay, yeah. Yes, ma'am. Okay, stress every day to pay the rent. That's what it's about. All right, we can go, look, I know we can go to everybody in the thousands here who will give me a different answer, but here is the bottom line. It means that millions of Americans worry every day, we just heard it, how they're going to pay their rent or how they're going to pay their mortgage. And as Alexandria mentioned a moment ago, all over this country, the cost of housing is soaring. So what do you do if you're living paycheck to paycheck and your landlord raises your rent 30%? You got to figure out where you're going to go. If you have a kid, you got to find another school. It is a disaster. How do you live if you're a single mom paying $20,000 a year for child care when you're making $40,000 or $50,000 a year? People want to feed their kids well, want decent food for their kids. How do you provide decent food for kids when the prices at the grocery store are soaring? If you get sick, your kid gets sick, your mom or your dad gets sick, how do you afford to go to the doctor if you have no health insurance or you have a $10,000 a year deductible? How do you pay your credit card bill? People have credit card bills here? And if you don't pay it, Wall Street gets 20%, 30% interest rates. People all over this country just worry about what happens if you're living paycheck to paycheck and your car breaks down. And the guy at the repair shop says it's costing $1,000 to get it fixed. Well, what happens if you don't have that $1,000? How do you get to work? And what happens if you don't get to work? What happens if you get fired? How are you going to take care of your families? Those are the stresses that tens of millions of Americans are experiencing. And let me tell you something that is almost never, ever talked about. In America today, our life expectancy, how long we live on average, is about 4 years shorter than people in most other wealthy countries. But what is even more embarrassing is that working class Americans are living 7 years shorter lives than the wealthy. Why is that? Hold it. Why is that? Raise your hands. Yes, ma'am. All right, this woman hit it right on the head. The answer is stress. What doctors will tell you, it's not a new medical fact, is that when you live under stress every day, trying to figure out how you're going to feed your kids, how you're going to pay the rent, you know, how you deal with a boss who is not very pleasant. All right, right, dealing with Trump, all right. All of that stress has an impact on your body and your mind. And in the richest country in the world, working class people should not have to die unnaturally young. They should be able to live long and productive lives. But the issue that we're dealing with in America now is not just income and wealth inequality, and it's not just the stress that working people are feeling. Today in America, we are the only major nation on earth that does not guarantee health care to all people as a human right. Despite spending twice as much per capita. You got it? It's not that we're not spending enough money. We're spending a fortune, $14,000 for every man, woman, and child. Despite that, 85 million Americans are uninsured or underinsured. All right, raise your hand if you have a high deductible. Ha! There it is. In America today, 60,000 people die because they don't get to a doctor on time. Got it? And the reason is, and I've talked to doctors, people walk in much sicker than they should be. And they say, doctors say, well, why didn't you come in here when you first had felt your symptoms? Answer is, I had no health insurance or I had a high deductible. Health care is a human right. And together we are going to stand up and finally pass a Medicare for all single-payer program. Today, because of the greed of the pharmaceutical industry, anybody here having a hard time paying for prescription drugs? 1 out of 4 Americans can't afford to fill the prescriptions their doctors write, because in some cases we pay 10 times more for the same drugs as sold abroad. There is no reason why we should pay the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. Let us stand together and demand that Congress lower the cost of prescription drugs by at least 50%. All over this country, we've got a housing crisis. Got a housing crisis here in Las Vegas? It's not just that we have 800,000 people who are homeless. That's bad enough. But you got 20 million people in America paying 50% of their limited incomes for housing. We got an education crisis, child care, dysfunctional, very expensive. The workers there make low wages. Public education doesn't have enough money to attract the teachers that we need. And millions of young people are struggling to figure out how they are going to get a higher education. And in terms of climate change, we now embarrassingly have a president who believes that climate change is a hoax, which means that we're going to fall further and further behind in trying to save the planet. So why is all of this stuff happening? Why are we the only country that doesn't guarantee health care? Why are the rich getting richer and working people struggling? Boy, this is a smart audience. You got it. You know, we all know, it's true in Vermont, and I'm sure it's true here. We all know people who are dealing with addiction, right? Drug addiction is a horrendous problem. I think we lost 100,000 people because of drug overdoses. We know people who are alcoholic, who need more and more to drink. We know people who can't control themselves with food or tobacco. But I will tell you that the worst addiction in this country today is the greed of the oligarchy. They are like heroin addicts. They need more and more and more. And if they destroy Social Security and Medicaid to get what they want, that is what they will do. And right now, as Alexandria mentioned, they are in the process of dismembering the federal government and cutting programs that low-income and working families desperately need so they can give themselves over $1 trillion in huge tax breaks. And in order to get those tax breaks, they want to cut Medicaid by $880 billion. They want to destroy our Social Security system at a time when 22% of seniors are trying to get by on $15,000 a year or less. What they are trying to do is to discredit Social Security, lie about Social Security. Some of you heard Trump say, oh, all these people, 150, 200 years of age getting Social Security. Total, absolute lie. Well over 99% of the people in this country who get those Social Security checks paid for those checks. We got any veterans here today? Thank you, veterans. Well, Musk and Trump are going after the VA. They want to lay off over 80,000 employees at the Veterans Administration. That will result in lower quality health care and delays in veterans getting the benefits to which they are entitled. Trump and Musk, right now, today, they're trying to dismantle the Department of Education. That means public schools in working class areas could lose money. It means that people on Pell Grants are going to have a harder time getting those grants. And it means that kids with disabilities who are now getting the support they need may lose that support. Now, the way you destroy the government is by laying off hundreds of thousands of employees, and that is precisely what they are doing right now. And I want you all to think about this for a moment. I know we all feel badly for those federal employees, people who have worked for the government for years, devoted their lives to public service, and you can have Musk coming along and say, oh, we've determined your performance is poor, you're out of here, goodbye. Now, I know a lot of people feel sympathy for those employees, but I want you to think about something. If Musk and his friends can treat federal employees like that, you worked here 20 years, you're out of here, goodbye. What do you think that they will be doing to workers in the private sector when artificial intelligence comes to take your job? Now, technology in itself is not a bad thing if it works for working people, not just the people on top. But it is not just domestic policies of the Trump administration that we've got to fight. For the first time in our 250-year history, we have a president who is turning his back on democracy and allying us with authoritarianism and murderers like Vladimir Putin. No, we must not abandon the people of Ukraine who were invaded, Mr. President. Ukraine did not start this war, Russia did. Our country must always stand for democracy, not dictatorship. And no, at a time when Netanyahu is waging a horrific war against the Palestinian people, our government must not provide another nickel to that murderous government. My friends, it is no great secret that our government is way out of touch with the needs of working families. I don't think anybody would deny it. You have a two-party system, both parties heavily dominated by big money interests. So our job in the coming weeks and months is not just to take Trump on in every step of the way, but it's to do more. It's to have a vision for where our country should be going. As the wealthiest nation on earth, to begin, it's important to know that we are not going to make the changes we need so long as we continue to have a corrupt campaign finance system. It is not democracy when Musk himself can spend $270 million to help elect Trump and then become the most powerful person in government. And there are billionaires in the Democratic Party also playing a major role. Our job is to overturn this horrendous Supreme Court decision on Citizens United and to move this country to public funding of elections, one person, one vote, not billionaires buying elections. No, we should not be giving huge tax breaks to billionaires. On the contrary, we've got to demand that they start paying their fair share of taxes. No. That sounds pretty good up here. And while we're at it, we cannot maintain a federal minimum wage of $7.25 an hour. Got to raise that minimum wage to a living wage, at least $17 an hour. And we, all over this country, workers know that if you want decent wages and benefits and working conditions, you got to join a union. But all over this country, corporations are making it harder and harder for workers to join unions. And that's why we need to pass legislation that I just introduced called the PRO Act that penalizes any employer that acts illegally when workers are trying to form a union. Together, we're going to stop the cuts to Social Security. Instead of cutting Social Security, we're going to expand Social Security benefits. Instead of making massive cuts to Medicaid, we're going to join every other major country on earth, guarantee health care to all through a Medicare for all single-payer system. And in the wealthiest country on earth, you know what? Nobody should go homeless. Nobody should pay 50% of their income in housing. We can create millions of jobs by building 4 million units of low-income and affordable housing and stopping corporate landlords from jacking up rent prices. I grew up in a rent-controlled apartment. Seems to me that's a pretty good idea. And in a competitive global economy, we need the best educated workforce in the world. All of our young people must have the ability to get a higher education by making public colleges and universities and trade schools and universities tuition free. Alexandria led the effort for the Green New Jobs, creating millions of good-paying jobs, transforming our energy system to save the planet. Let's do it. Now, I know that there are a lot of people here in Las Vegas and around the country who are feeling despair and anxiety about what's happening in D.C. And some of you may feel a little bit hopeless. So let me say this. At this particular moment, this pivotal moment in American history, despair is not an option. Giving up is not acceptable, and none of us have the privilege of hiding under the covers. The stakes are just too high. And let us never forget, real change only occurs when ordinary people at the grassroots level stand up against oppression and injustice and fight back. That is the history of our country from way back when. When this country was first formed, you had people here who took on the most powerful person in the world, the King of England, and the entire British Empire. And you know what? They won. In the 1840s, you had people in the abolitionist movement standing up and saying, slavery is not acceptable, it's horrendous, it's horrific. They had to take on the great power of the slave owners. And we fought a war where hundreds of people, hundreds of thousands of people died. But we won. Slavery was abolished. In the early part of our century, workers who were overworked and underpaid demanded to form unions. Some of them were killed, they were fired, they were beaten. But they stood up for the trade union movement, and they won and helped create the American middle class. In the 1930s, we had a depression. 25% of America was unemployed. But people stood up, elected a great president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, transformed the government, and we managed to end the depression. In 1941, this country was attacked at Pearl Harbor. Our military was weak. We had to fight a war on two fronts. Yet, because the nation came together and we produced the planes, the guns, the tanks that we needed in 2.5 years, that war was essentially won. So what I am saying to you is that this is not the first time we have faced crises. And what I believe from the bottom of my heart is the American people do not want to see a handful of billionaires running this country. The American people understand that in democracy, we criticize each other, we have free elections, and we're not like Donald Trump, too cowardly to accept criticism. American people do not want to move us toward an authoritarian society. The American people understand that there's something very wrong today when so few have so much and so many have so little. So my view is that while I am not a mathematician, I do know that 99% is a hell of a lot bigger number than 1%. And I believe from the bottom of my heart, if we do not let Trump and his friends divide us up by the color of our skin, or where we were born, or our religion, or our sexual orientation, if we stand together as one people, fighting for justice, there is nothing that we cannot do. Trust me, I work in Washington, and I know the power of the oligarchs. They are very powerful. But if we stand together, I have zero doubt that we can and will defeat them, that we can transform the economics and politics of this country, and that we can have an economy and a government that works for all of us, not just the 1%. Thank you all very much.
Stay right here. They're coming up.